Okay, we're back.
And she's back.
All right, perfect.
So where were we? Something
I think
about
we were
conscious
talking about,
leadership.
yeah, just conscious leadership and being mindful of where you let, what you let drain your energy and being responsible for your reactions and all of that fun stuff.
Do you teach your team the same things? Do you is this something, because it seems like it's had quite a profound impact on you? You were talking about candidates and all of the different
Mhm.
people in the recruiting space that you can interact with. Is this something that you taught internally to your own teams, to your own people?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that because we spent the last 18 months within my company overhauling our culture to be a conscious connector culture. And so I
Yeah.
did take a lot of what I was learning and bring it back to my team. But it's interesting how I implemented this. And so the first thing that we did is I read this book, The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And that laid the
Hmm.
foundation for me to begin a deeper level of practice within those commitments. We decided to buy the book for everyone on our team, and then we highlighted one of the
Yes.
commitments every month for at our all hands, and then we talked about those commitments, and we would spend an all hands talking about one commitment per month and how our team's behaviors would show up in support of the principle, let's say. We also mailed the book to all of our clients. And we were not working with conscious companies. We were working with a lot of different companies, a lot of tech companies. Some people may have read the book because it was kind of like us saying this is a foundation of how we work and how we best show up to support you and partner with your company. And some of the companies didn't read anything, which is very apparent, and that's fine. So for us, and for me, it was about planting these seeds of consciousness and then creating invitations and opportunities for my team to see what felt good for them. Not everybody was into the 15 commitments, number one. Not everybody wanted to hear about my revelations and things that I was learning and the wisdom that I was bringing back to the team, but I would share with them.
No.
And initially, I think I probably was very excited and preachy, like sharing everything and so, awakened and all of that. My posture on what I was learning evolved to showing the team and giving them opportunities to experience what I had gone through coaching, through retreats, through breath work, through meditation, through all different modalities I was using, and then letting them enroll themselves. Like I was not preaching anymore to convert. I was talking about
No.
and embodying an energy that created invitations for people to decide what was for them and what was not for them. And I will say at the time last year, we had over 100 people on our team. Probably 65% were aligned with that, and then the rest were not. My goal was to really have, I would love to have had 100% of my organization fully on board with conscious leadership principles and their own inner work and healing and becoming fully formed, emotionally intelligent adults at work. That was my dream.
Yeah.
But, it's not always what you'll see. I will say as we rebuild my company, because we're much smaller now, I have basically a skeleton team at the moment.
Yeah.
My short list is very short. I have maybe 30 people that I would want to bring back on the team that are fully aligned, aspiring, emerging conscious leaders who align with the values and who get our principles and want to show up in the world in a different way.
Do you think if that reconstruction of your company has not happened, that there would have been space for those 40% that was not into that? Or do you think that guidance on where you wanted to go with the conscious leadership would basically have created, let's put it, a natural selection, not in the essence of saying you would walk out as the manager, just
Yeah.
firing people, but more a
Yeah.
matter of saying, people will naturally come to the conclusion that this is probably not the best place for me anymore because I'm misaligned with the culture that this
Yep.
company is having now.
Yeah, fully. I fully believe that was on its way of happening. And I'm really happy that it all happened the way that it did, because now it's given me a lot of perspective and spaciousness to really rethink how I go about building a new organization and bringing this work out to other companies. I'm very, very passionate about redefining company culture from a place of consciousness and understanding how doing that level of work and having a strong level of enrollment from your team creates more opportunities for growth, personal and professional growth, but also revenue growth and impact in
Yeah.
the customers and clients that you serve. And so all of it works together. And I have the case study, like I lived it. So it was really, while it was challenging during the time, it's just been such a beautiful learning experience to think about. And I do agree, people would just self-select out. They don't want to do it. And that's okay, because choosing
Of
to
course.
be a conscious leader and live in a conscious place, even as a parent, choosing to be a conscious parent, choosing to be a conscious partner, like it is a dedication, it's a commitment, it's a devotion, and it's not easy. I always joke and say, like, that's why it's called inner work. It's not called inner party, because like this shit is hard. It's like, it's not a walk
It
in the
is so true.
park. You
No, it's
have
not.
this like love-hate relationship. Sometimes it feels easier to
Yes.
just be in your low
It's like
vibe
doing
life.
yoga, right? It's like, I
Right.
know it's good for me, but it sucks.
Right. Or, all the things. So I feel like it's okay. I think before I was just this crusader mindset, and I would feel maybe like sad for the people who weren't into it. Like I really wanted them to like have the light bulb go off and join us on the journey. And
Yeah.
now I'm in a place of like no judgment and full acceptance of everybody. And there's a term that Seth Godin uses a lot called sonder. And sonder is when you realize that every single human being that you see is on their own journey and has their own complicated, complex human experience that they're navigating. And and that's that. And you just accept it. So I definitely have reframed those who don't want to be on this journey with me and just show up in light and love and non-judgment, and hope that wherever they end up, they're happy as well.
So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that now when you're building up again, that you would probably prefer, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, to actually build something that is, from a business and revenue standpoint, smaller, but more in line with what you want it to be, compared to having
100%.
something at, it's fascinating, right? Because it would probably be, I am, it's the same on my, what we do with 24 slides is the core of what we do is a purpose and a very strong purpose of what we're trying to do. And I have the same thing. I would much rather have it be smaller and, and not grow as fast and as, traditionally capitalistic successful, but then being super aligned with the purpose because that's where my motivation lies. But I
Yep.
actually believe that because that is so pure, our ability to attract people who are really like deeply motivated by that translate into a team that is really motivated, really engaging, and therefore is performing at a higher level. So it becomes this weird circle back where I actually believe in the long term it will probably yield us a much more profitable, more successful business from a capitalist. Do you think that would happen for you too? That you might end up in some place in the future saying because you have clarity of purpose, there's a lot of other things that will fall in line that will probably enable you to build something that's even more special, both from a purpose, but also from a profit standpoint.
Yeah, agree. Completely agree. It's like you read my mind. That's exactly how I feel. And that's exactly what I'm aiming to do. And I do believe that we can run a smaller, leaner team that's going to be more potent and definitely more high performing. And so I'm excited to see that unfold.
That's so cool. I have another question. So the revelation you get, the epiphany you get when you read a book and you share it with your team, I can really understand the not preaching part. But the issue I have, I like to consume all kinds of mostly books, right? But learn all kinds of stuff. I'm easily excited, I would say. My team would say too easily excited. Um, but it actually, the issue I sometimes face is I read something and now I'm aware that I'm easily excited, right? So I used to always just, knock down the door and be like, I just read the best book in the world. We have to do all of these things, right? So I know that that's probably not what we should do. But still, even if I remove all of that excitement, there's a core level of knowledge left in many of the things that I tend to see, where in many cases I'm sitting back with this feeling that if I could take this core knowledge and I could share it with our management team and with the closest leaders in the company, and we could just talk about it, that would be really beneficial for us. It would give us a vocabulary to talk about specific issues or problems. It would give us some idea about where we're going, and they would give us a lot of different things. Because I sometimes catch myself in then talking about concepts that you have read, and if you read a lot, then all of a sudden you stack up concepts, and then you can get a gap there where it can be hard to bridge. Is that
Hmm.
something you tried with other things? And if so, did you, speak a little bit about that, or whether or not you experienced the same thing?
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm very similar in my approach, and I get really excited, and I do read a lot, and then I'm like immediately telling everybody this new thing, and my whole team's like, chill out. My COO, everyone's like, all right, here she goes again. So I have to hold back, as I did that for like 2 years, and it was like a lot for everybody. So now I'm definitely more aware of that. And to your point, like I will let things marinate a bit before I bring it to my team. And I think it's less like we all need to read this and like have this foundation. And it's more about how do I take what I've read and what I've experienced in some cases, synthesize it, and apply like my perspective to it that I know would be edited for our organization and our environment. And then how do I embody it? Because, it's interesting. Like, my husband doesn't read a lot. I read a lot, and he doesn't read anything ever. Like, that's the big joke. He orders books, and then they just sit around, and it takes him forever to read one page of anything. He hasn't even read my book. I have a book out, and he hasn't even read my book. Let's put it that way. So, so now it's like I often don't share everything. It's more like the energetics. How is this thing that I've learned and read transformed my life in a way that I can embody this new knowledge and wisdom, and people pick that up from me without having to read the book. And so I
Mm.
often seek that and see it as a reflection back and feedback. So an example is the other day I had coffee with my friend in New York. I haven't seen her in 2 years. And after the conversation that we had, she left and she texted me that night and she said, it was so good to see you. I found our conversation so inspiring and your energy is contagious. But I didn't have to say
Nice.
like, here's the book I've been reading and here's all the things I've been doing and like do what I do. It was
No,
more
no,
just like synthesizing all of that into an energetic that I carry.
that's nice. That is nice. Can you talk a little bit about how, I mean, from a concrete standpoint, there's two things I'm super interested in. That is, when you implement culture in your own company, how practically do you make sure that it gets to live in the company and it's not just something on the wall? You talk about the 15 commandments, you walk through it, you talk about it. I see, won't say a lot of companies, but I've seen some companies where they did that, something along those lines, right? So they talked about it and, they walked through it. And then when you actually end up in the behaviors on the floor, it was something completely different. How have you guys thought about making sure you have structures in the company to make sure it doesn't just become, the famous empty words or something hanging on the wall, but it actually lives? How do you check it? What structures do you use?
Yeah. So for us, it's values. Starts and ends with values. And this is what I talk a lot about with clients as well, or prospective clients that come to us. If you don't know your values, it's hard to determine how you're going to hire. It's also hard to determine how you're going to fire, promote, reward, recognize, and grow a culture. So, as a leadership team or even a leadership of one, it's important for you to get clear on what your values are and then the behaviors that support the values. Like, how do you want people to act in support of this value that you're saying is important to you? Keep it simple. You don't need 50 values, you need 3 to 5. And you align on those with yourself or your leadership team. And then you have the behaviors that support that. And then you roll it out and you talk about it all the time. It's not just in your one monthly meeting, it is in every meeting. It is in all your one-on-ones. If your people managers are managing people, it's in their one-on-ones. It is how you reward and recognize. It's how you celebrate your wins with clients, with customers, with each other. It is over the top. It's 100 times more than you think that you need to be talking about it. You need to be talking about it. So we did that, and I was just sharing this recently. Like a couple of years ago, we had an all hands, and I decided to just test my team out. And on the all hands, I was like, so who can tell me what our values are? And then it was silent for 10 minutes. And then I was like, okay, well, we have some work to do because here are the values. Let's pull them up on the website. We overhauled them, and then we re-rolled them out a few months later. And after we re-rolled them out, that became our foundation for everything. So it also came our foundation for like celebrations and wins. We gave awards for it. We talked about, okay, every month we had a Get Shit Done award. This month, Bob got the Get Shit Done award because he was in alignment with our value of mindfulness. He showed up mindfully with A, B, and C clients, and they felt blah, 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 and then this was X. And so we would give a lot of examples, especially for people who are earlier in their career. Okay, that's good. This is a
Yeah.
good behavior that supports the value. Same thing with hiring. It goes back to hiring, 101. When you are defining a role, you have obviously the technical skills, but then you have the soft skills that need to be in alignment with the values that your company wants to embody and exhibit. Same thing with firing. People who don't exhibit these values don't work at this company. Simple as that. I had to learn that lesson the hard way because we turned over some people, or some people have left the organization now that never exhibited our old values or our new ones. And I never stopped
Hmm.
it. These people didn't report directly to me. And now I'm thinking as I sit with these lessons going, why did I let this behavior go on for X amount of years? Like, why didn't I have the hard conversation? Why didn't I call them forward on the fact that they weren't exhibiting our values and they were leaders of my company? What precedent does
Yeah.
that set? So I think that is the biggest and most important, very obvious and tactical thing to do and hammer out before you start building your team, and then from there your culture will build.
So how do you do that? So let's go even further down. So let's say you have some sort of, if somebody says, I would like my salary to be more or no higher. You would normally have some definition of this is what you look like when you're successful in this role. There will normally, that's at least how we treat it at 24 Slides, is like you have a performance component, which is
Mm-hmm.
like if you're a salesperson, how much do you sell? If you are
Mm-hmm.
a software engineer, how much do you code? If you're a designer, how much do you design? And then there is a culture slash personal component of many different things. How great are
Mm-hmm.
you at enabling your team to grow and
Yeah.
being brave and that stuff? Is it something similar to that where you kind of have and like a scoring system where you
Mm-hmm.
would say, how well do you exhibit the behaviors that
Yeah.
we align toward our value? Do you have it so concrete, or how have you set that
Yeah.
up?
Yeah. So when you're starting out, if you don't know your values and you're getting ready to do this, let's say it's you and your direct leadership team, my recommendation would be to have all of your leadership team in a spreadsheet, and then have all of your leadership team think of their top performers or the best people, the top 3 people in the organization, and why. Why did they pick those top 3 people? And then you list out why.
Yeah.
Because they're punctual, because they're a team player, because they are fun, because they blah, 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 whatever the behaviors are, right? From there, all of you go down your list of your top 3 and you start to see some trends. You'll start to see overlapping terms, even if you're all individually describing why these people are great at your company, but the common thread often becomes what the values are that you decide to set. And then from there, you have those values defined. And then what we did was we had a delivery director. So he managed all of our recruiters. Once we rolled out the new values, we had also defined who is the best recruiter on the team. She set the bar. Why is she the best? And then we went through line by line. Technically, skilled wise, she was the best. And then values alignment wise, she was the best. What was her strongest value that she exhibited? And I guess in her case, it might have been growth mindset or whatever.
Yeah.
We had that sheet, and then the delivery director actually assessed in almost every one of his one-on-ones. He had in a spreadsheet how these people were tracking against this, like week over week over week. And sometimes it would shift. Like maybe they were a little less on growth mindset because they were burnt out, and then they were really high on team player or whatever it is. And then their technical skills, were they continuously refining their technical skills and getting better, or were they kind of status quo, or did they actually not hit their numbers with the client? We also got feedback loops on the client, and would survey their experience with our team. So it wasn't like a hard and fast, because obviously this goes back to seeking Sonder and being mindful of the energetics. Like we're not robots, we're humans. And
No, exactly.
Sometimes you're going to have a bad day, and that's going to impact how you show up, right? In your role, and they don't decouple.
Yeah.
It's really hard to compartmentalize. And that was one of my biggest learnings in my whole journey, is that I am one human being in one vessel. So I can't, if I'm having a horrible time in my marriage, I'm not going to be like the best leader, or vice versa. So, we would factor a lot of that into determining what our assessments are. And we would also have the team self-assess. We would say, how do you think that you're doing? And then they would say, a lot of them would rank themselves super, super high. And then we would say, okay, well, from our perspective, this is where you're at. Like everyone's always thinking they're 100, but we would be like, okay, well, here are the realities and here are the facts. Here's the feedback we're getting. Here's the sense that we have, whatever.
So it sounds like the primary input into that was, from a leadership standpoint, your evaluation of how do they stack up against this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then also combined with customer input, and also combined sometimes with their own feedback loops.
Yeah, their own feedback. You could go so far as 360, where you're getting feedback from their peers as well, or other cross-functional leaders. That's how we would determine it. But it all started with values, and then also, what does the best look like to us? That was the thing with my leadership team. Before we had our delivery director, I'd get on a call and I would say, who's our best recruiter? And nobody could tell me. And then I would say, well, that's kind of concerning that we have a big, huge team of people who are recruiting, and nobody on my leadership team can tell me who the best person is that does this role. I think I know, but I'm also a few degrees removed. So we had to go on a whole project build to have a full assessment on the entire team and stack rank them based on who we determined was the best. And it was interesting because the best recruiter we had was not the most senior or the one with the most experience. She was actually one of our more juniors. She was an earlier hire on our team. She'd been with us a long time, or since we first built our team in 2019 or 20. But she only had a few years of work experience. Meanwhile, we had other recruiters on the team with 25 years of work experience, and they weren't our top performers.
Yes. Fascinating how 25 years of experience can actually be 1 year of experience times 25, right? And
Yeah.
when
And
people don't grow, they have
Right. The resistance to the growth mindset. I think growth mindset for us, that is one of our values. And I think that is the most important. That's been my like leading value in my entire life. And having that growth mindset is what led me to all of the crazy experiences that I've had. And it's one of the things that I look for the most in people.
So two questions to that. First question is, how do you try to be as specific as possible? How do you test for that? You talk to somebody, you want to find out, does this person have growth mindset or not? Do you have specific questions you ask, or how do you try to figure out if this is a person that has that?
Yeah, it's a challenge because when you're early in your career, let's say you just graduated college,
Yeah,
I think the question might be different because they don't have any experience yet, or they may not have had an opportunity to leverage a growth mindset yet. But it's almost like thinking through, what is something interesting or new that you just learned. You might ask them that question. I had that question come to me in an interview once. And at the time, because I was curious, I was working at a bike shop. I was a recruiter, but I worked literally at a road bike shop because I had a road bike and I wanted to learn how to wrench on it and like set up my own bike. And so that was what I shared was like, I got a job at a bike shop for $10 an hour while I'm also a recruiter because I just want to learn about this thing. And so that was a good example of she must be really into learning if she's like working at a bike shop to learn this thing.
yes,
I think for my earlier career hires, my juniors, I look, for how like willing and open and like hungry they are. Are you hungry to learn? Are,
yeah,
are you also coachable? And are you curious?
yes,
That's
yes,
the other thing. Like, are you curious or are you defensive? Because if you're defensive and you shut down when you're given feedback, well, like that's not going to work. And if you're open-minded and you're curious and you just want to know and you ask questions, that is in alignment for what we look for. I think you can pressure test that by their own ability to get prepped for the interview and the questions that they're asking you in the interview. If they show up no prep and no
yeah.
questions, well, I don't know.
No, I agree. I actually, it's a lot of the same things that I've had experiences with that I think, and I'm asking because I find that what you call the growth mindset for me is very much, are you willing to kind of get uncomfortable to learn type of it? That's kind of, I
Yeah.
feel that in many cases at the core of it, like, are you willing to, if it's physical, are you willing to kind of run until your leg hurts? And if it's emotional, are you willing to like, lean into that difficult and not really nice conversation to kind of get out of that? But how you find that out and see it in people, I think is difficult. I think the feedback thing is incredibly important. I do sales at 24 slides. So it's for me, it's salespeople. But one of the things we do that I think has been very effective is a part of our hiring process is running um, role plays back to back. So it's a role play that's designed to make the candidate fail, meaning they
Mm-hmm.
cannot ace it no matter how good they are because they're playing 24 slides and they don't have
Mm-hmm.
context. And then deliberately they get feedback, and then it's exactly the same role play afterwards. And what I found so far is people who are really, there's both a lot of learning and just how do they receive feedback, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
you have somebody who think they're really good and you give them that feedback, then you can see. I would say we
Mm-hmm.
got some bullets right on somebody who looked really impressive, and then you gave them feedback, and you could just see, okay, that will not work, right? Um, but then actually how they apply it afterwards, I think is really a fascinating. That and then the curiosity thing, I
Mm-hmm.
also think is important, but I think it's so hard to dig out. Try to ask about how people learn or why they learn. That you worked in a bike shop for me would also be a huge plus, but it's more like it's very rare. Somebody says,
Yeah. No, it
I'm
is.
working at a bike shop next to my work to learn, right? That's,
It is very
yeah,
rare. I think that's what I've learned even about myself. And that's been a big lesson, because I think I used to be very, very hard on my team, and I was a perfectionist, and I would expect them to be just like me. But it wasn't a good
Yes.
thing. It was like I set the bar unrealistically high, not factoring in my own uniqueness and realizing like I'm quite different and I'm quite unique and I'm quite special. And not there's not a lot of that out there, and that's okay. So I also had to like unhook myself from that and be open to seeing everybody's own unique special magic that they bring to the table that is different than mine. And that's the beauty of diversity on the team, diversity of background and skills and experience and thought, and all of that is what, creates that culture of innovation as well. I don't want a million more me's. I want a lot of different people than me that have a
Yes.
common thread, but that's it.
So how do you get that? Because I had a discussion with a friend at some point, so in order to feel like you're part of a tribe, right? You want to feel part of something, and ideally, if you have a great company, you have a great culture, you want people to really feel like they're part of that. So on one end, you want some sort of commonality that people can feel like this is my tribe. I identify with these people. But at another point, you want broad, what you want a lot of diversity, right? So you want difference in gender, in age, in geographies, and colors, and language, and culture, and all of it. Um, how do you think you create that core of like having both something that people can identify with so they can feel like they belong to like a certain tribe, but at the same time, you want very different people?
Yeah. I think for that, I would probably talk about vision. So last year, I wrote a vivid vision, which is bigger than just your typical vision. A lot of times on a website, you have like two lines. We want to change the world doing X. Okay, cool. I wrote a 9-page vivid vision manifesto based on a book from one of my coaches. His name's Cameron Harold, and he wrote a book called Vivid Vision. And they actually do Vivid Vision retreats now with another woman I work with in Austin named Jennifer Hood. Yeah, she's amazing. So through this experience, I thought out a few years. What do I want this company to look and feel like? What is the language we're going to use? What gets us excited? How are we going to give back to the world and the community? What even gets me to feel this way about recruiting? And I got very, very specific. They interviewed me for about 4 hours, and then we came up with what the copy was on it. And then
Hmm.
I rolled that out to my leadership team. There was 4 of us. And then from there, we did an all hands last July, and we rolled that out. And I asked and invited everyone to be on camera. And I had my leadership team looking at everybody while I was talking about this big, vivid vision. I also invited other people to read parts of the vision statement throughout the whole hour that we were talking. And then we saw, like, are people into this? Or are they not into this? And going back to this, like, 65% were like, OMG, yes, sign me up. I'm down. I'm ready. I want to support. Let's go. And the whole Slack was lit up afterwards, like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. Yes. And then the other 40% were like, not on camera, don't care, don't want your vision, not into it. And the invitation was, if this doesn't resonate with you, then, now might be a good time for you to think about leaving, because it's only going to go up from here, and we're only going to continue to amplify now that this vision's communicated out in the universe and the world. And we're going to put it on our website. We're going to send it to our clients. We're going to talk to candidates about it. Like, this is it. And we had a little bit of turnover after that, and I was happy with it. I was happy that those people were like, yeah, I'm not into this anymore. I'm over it. And they chose to leave. And so I think, to your point, how to establish like that tribe and that commonality is from the leader perspective, from the CEO, to really get clear on the vision and like why you are doing the thing and what is the purpose and why does it matter? Why do you care? Why are you so into this thing? But a lot of what my vision talked about and still holds very true, beyond wanting to change the way that companies hire with intention and build businesses, was about my team. Like, how can we be conscious connectors, and how are we the ones that plant the seeds of consciousness within the companies that we hire? And I wanted my team to feel valued. I wanted them to feel like partners to these companies. I wanted them to feel supported, seen, heard, and acknowledged. And I also wanted them to feel at our company, whether they spent a year there, 5 years, 10, or a minute, like it was the best job they've ever had. And like they would remember this time in their career as like that was the place. And so it was really
Yeah.
anchored in the experience for them, not just for our customers, because that would translate. If they like loved that and felt that, then that would translate into the market. And I'll tell you now, it has been such a testament because we've gotten rid of and had to wind down a lot of our business because we haven't had a lot of work in recruiting the past 6 months. I've had every single person who's left write me these long paragraphs of emails of how they're praying for us. They want to come back the minute we have work. Dot changed their life. The leadership changed their life. They've never worked at a better place than this, blah, 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 blah. And so like all of that's so fulfilling for me
Oh,
because
that's
that's
the best,
exactly
huh?
like what I was going for, even though it felt challenging. And even though now like it feels so sad, I was crying a lot for the last month. Like, damn, like I feel like a failure almost as a CEO because we didn't have a lot of these things come to fruition, in this market. But I will say that it has been such a beautiful reflection back on the work that we chose to do and where we spent our time, effort, energy, and money in the last 2 years, because I have this network of people who are, feeling amazing about what they did and what they contributed when they were here. And that like really gives me a lot of hope.
And when things turn around, right? It's like, don't you think it sounds like when you have that core, that vision, that level of when you get those type of emails, you are probably situated. If you look across competitors in the field and other companies doing the same thing, my assumption without knowing it in detail would be that once the market condition turns and you guys need to scale up, that you would have a leg.
Yeah, no, I do feel that. And I do feel it's going to look and feel different for us. And to your point earlier, like I'm good with a smaller team, a
Yeah,
smaller revenue, and doing different
higher talent
things.
density.
Yeah, yeah, honestly. I I feel really good about this spaciousness and where we're at in the market. And it's been a crazy couple of years, coming from COVID to double the amount of hiring to now people laying off. And it's been a windy road for recruiters and internal HR folks. And so for me personally, I feel it's a nice little break and pause before ramping up to, normal hiring
Whatever
again.
comes.
Yeah, exactly.
What is the, tell me about your vision. So it sounds like it's basically, no, tell me about your vision. If you can, I don't think we can go over all 9 pages now, but
Yeah,
if you can
no.
take like the core elements of it and then share that.
Yeah, so I mean, my vision is to lead a conscious connector movement where we help companies hire with intention and we help them to build conscious cultures or overhaul maybe old school, outdated methodologies and frameworks that don't
Yeah.
work. Where my team feels like a valued partner because we're often on the vendor side, right? And where these companies feel supported. So I've always shared with my team, when you work with somebody at our company, regardless if you're an intern or if you report into me, there's a level of ownership and leadership within your role. And I want all of our clients and candidates to feel that dot connect difference. They meet us, it's energy, and they walk out of that meeting and they go, wow, I love that recruiter. I love that client engagement lead. I love my sourcer. They see me, they get me, they know what I'm looking for. They understand me on a deeper level. We're human beings doing this together. And so that's the experience that I'm hoping to create. And that's the feedback that I want to hear. That's what I want to hear from our
So the
clients and our candidates.
so to get that experience, I assume that you have a special, not special way, but it seems like there's also a connection about looking at the whole human on your own people, right? Do you go as far as reaching into, if we were reaching out or somebody else reaches out and say, hey, we would like for .connect to help us recruit these types of people. Do you go all the way into that company and say, okay, let's talk about what it is we will hire candidates into? So if you have a company where it's really bad performance management and maybe not a great setup, do you then even address that and maybe say, maybe we're not the right ones for you because we like to
Yeah.
recruit into a different situation, or do you do that part as well? How far do you take it?
Yeah. And so I think now we're primed to have those more mindful conversations. Last year, when we were in growth mode, we took a lot of work, and we took a lot of work from companies that are 0% conscious, that had toxic cultures, that were not good partners for
Yes.
our company. And I would hear this. I would hear how some of the clients were treating my team. And in some cases, I had to intervene and like reset expectations and get aligned on, you know, all of that. And now moving forward, there's definitely work that I'll do discovery calls on or vet. And if I don't get a good feeling about what's going on internally at a company, then yeah, we won't take the work. That's the thing. Like, we're not in a position anymore like growth for all costs and to fuel the
No.
business because we have all of this. This is really mindful, intentional growth and working with companies that are aligned with us. Last year, we were doing a lot of aligning with all of these places. Now it's, do you align with being conscious companies, or are you conscious curious and you need a little help? Then like we would love to help you and show you and like pave
To
the
do that.
way. And yeah, so it's definitely changed the
I
conversation.
think that's smart because I think, I mean, real good business for you would almost be to be trusted career advisors for really great people. So imagine you get to a point like where the best candidates out there really trust that you actually have sort of a selection process. So if
Yeah.
you have a company and you work with a company, they know that, you know, they can trust that you're not putting them into a bad situation. You know what I'm saying? So it's like there's probably, if you make that short or longer term investment, it probably is to kind of say we will be a little bit more picky with the clients that we work with because we want to make sure that when we hire our candidates into whoever we work with, we want them to go in and be successful and grow. Then you might be able to probably attract even better candidates that would
Yeah.
increase the level of trust they have in you, and that's actually, I never thought about that before, but that might put you in a really strong position, right? If you manage to get that and get that kind of brand up and running, your ability to maybe attract a higher level of talent than other recruiters could. Yeah, interesting. I like that idea. I never thought about it that way before. I mean, we kind of have the same thing, I think. So for us, it's like I describe it as creating jobs that enables people to live great lives. That's kind of how I view it. How do you, instead of saying, I think that's traditionally what work has been, is saying, here's a job, and then you wrap your life around the job, right?
Yeah.
There's a time
Yeah.
you punch in, there's a time you punch out. It's like that's set in stone. That can only happen. I think what we're really trying to do is to say, okay, so we put your happy life in the middle, and then we try to wrap the job around that. You know what I'm saying? And then
Yeah.
add as much flexibility and stuff. And of course, in order to have work, you need some sort of value creation. But in the modern world, there's just so many things you can do, right? Work times and tech and etc. But kind of having that approach sounds like kind of the same thing, and we've been doing it for a long time. That for sure is our secret sauce because right now it means that once you make that investment of saying we hire really great people, we spend a ton of resources making them better, then we just spend even more resources treating them really well. But that means that they stick along, right? They're here
Yeah.
for the long run and they stay a long time. So you have very little churn, and that over the medium to longer term has just led us to a point where now we can just the value we can create for our clients because we just have really high talent density is just think outside compared to whoever we compete with, right? It sounds like you're on the same trajectory to do that now.
Yeah.
I like that. Oh my God, I like that. So, um, the psychedelic space, I have to ask. So, what do you see in that one? And I'm asking out of pure interest because I heard a podcast one. I like to listen to a guy called Huberman. Do you know him?
Yeah.
Well, so he had somebody on talking about how, the story of psychedelics and how it has not been used for a long period of time. And now that they're actually starting to be allowed to do therapeutic stuff around that as well, is that kind of the angle where you guys are seeing, okay, we believe that this is going in one direction and one direction only, and that is that good responses will come out of it. There's probably going to be a lot of businesses built on top of legal use of psychedelics. Could you say that for solving all kinds of different things? Is that why you kind of created the Dose Connect version of this, or what is it you
Yeah.
guys are seeing?
Yeah, Dose Connect for us came from, last year I had a big year in psychedelics and experimenting and healing. And I was just so passionate about the industry and the work and the plants. And first of all, I didn't even know there was an industry in psychedelic therapeutics at all. But I was just doing psychedelics and
I actually didn't know there
experimenting.
were
And
that you had,
yeah,
so there's an industry already.
yeah, like healing. And so next thing you know, my COO texted me that she was going to a psychedelic business conference. At the same time, I was just finishing a retreat where I had done 5-MeO DMT for the first time, and I had a very profound experience. So she texts me, I'm integrating my 5-MeO, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is our sign. We need to blend our experience of building companies in this emerging industry, but start smaller. Start with these companies that we just work with the founders to help them define their vision and their values, and then talk about org structure when they're ready to scale, and then talk about hiring. And it's a little bit more comprehensive and like full
Yes.
scope of HR. But it was primarily because we were passionate about the industry. It has helped us. Psychedelics have personally helped us and changed our lives. And so if there is a way to support getting access and expanding the use of psychedelics for those who need it, we wanted to be at the forefront of that.
Nice. I like that. I didn't know there were an industry. I assumed there were because I assumed that it seems like there's a lot of pinned up expectations because it has been, even just experimenting, and I'm not talking about people just experimenting in a cave or a tent somewhere. I'm talking like academics looking at how does this impact the mind and what can and what cannot be done has
Yeah.
kind of been locked down for so long that now that they're kind of and the interview I heard, I heard several of them, but the interview I heard with this guy, I think he's been doing it for like 32 years in a therapeutic mindset of, treating people with PTSD. And it sounded on him like the results he've had for all 32 years is insane, but he's had to do it like just not openly. And now finally, from an academic standpoint, he's able to kind of say, okay, now we can actually have the universities sponsor an academic,
Yep. Yep.
study, with double-blind placebo, all of that stuff. And it seems like he was now replicating it. So it's one of the things, and that's why it caught my interest when I saw you had that is I'm excited to see where that goes because it seems like it's such a powerful way of treating mental illnesses, and it seems like that's a generally really big issue that we have in all
Yeah.
of the
It's
Western
it's
world. As,
post COVID, people are traumatized, and COVID really brought a lot out and up for people. And mental health is more important than it's ever been, and it's more talked about now than it's ever been. And so I think it's an important conversation to have that, supports healing in a lot of different capacities. I also think that just because certain things will become legal for therapeutic use over the next couple of years or whatever, and there's an industry emerging, there's still always going to be this other market where you're going to get your drugs and whatever. And that's still continuing to thrive. And people are out there about it when it comes to all different types of substances. And at the end of the day, I think people want access to safe drugs and they want to do them however they want to do them. So you can do them therapeutically with all of that, or you can go have your own experiences with psychedelics and do them however you've always done them. And that's okay too.
Of course, but yeah, it's a personal choice, right? At least from my perspective. But from your perspective, if you're trying to build a business on top of it, I assume that many of those startups, I don't know, so many of the startups that you work with aren't that startup that is working within the space of what we believe will happen if it gets legalized, or is it
Yeah.
also companies that is doing retreats or doing all kinds of other stuff? I'm more thinking if you're
Yeah.
trying to build on top
Yeah.
of an industry, it has to be something legal, I assume.
Yeah, yeah, for
Otherwise,
sure.
it's
Right now, we have a client that is a ketamine clinic that they're opening in New York, up, further outside of the city in New York. And so we see some stuff like that. We definitely see retreats in countries where plant medicine is legalized. There's other things that are, in the hopper in Colorado and obviously Oregon. But there's still a long ways to go, and there's a long ways to go when it
yeah.
comes to getting this to a place of being affordable or covered by insurance if they are going the route of legalization. And so that's been part of the challenge. I mean, they just released some pricing around psilocybin treatment and therapy in Oregon, and it's like $3,500 for a couple of microdose sessions plus the therapy. Not covered by insurance. That's not always super accessible for a lot of people. So there's a lot of work to
That's
be done
crazy.
on that.
That is crazy. But then, yeah, yeah, a lot of work to be done because in many cases, that is basically what I heard from that interview. Two sessions like that could treat some pretty severe PTSD from being, you know, very limiting and somebody being on drugs for the rest of their life to like being really clear on two sessions, right? So it makes sense if you can go from being not well to being well. But it's true, you need to change those rules and regulations because, yeah, we need that support in. But it will make sense from an insurance company standpoint because otherwise they end up paying drugs for like the eternity of time, right?
Right.
But the pharma industry.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Thank you so much. Let's end it on that. That's such a
Yeah,
high note to end
thanks.
it on, right? Like let's make sure we clear out and handle all mental illnesses worldwide with spicing in a bit of psychedelics. Thank you so much for your time, Dom. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
It's been nice speaking with you.
You too. I'll see you later.
See you later. Bye.